The aftermath of a flood disaster in China is shaping up to be one of the country's biggest mysteries of the year. It all started when floodwaters started pouring into a traffic tunnel in Zhengzhou city, submerging hundreds of cars in the 2-mile-long tunnel. Heavy rain drenched the city back in July, and to relieve flood pressure, excess water was released from nearby reservoirs. But authorities gave no warning ahead of time.
If authorities issued a notice about the water discharge, then people might file claims against the regime for the resulting property damage.
Why wasn't the tunnel closed ahead of the severe weather? An expert explains the problem comes from the country's rigid system. In our latest special report, we dig into the truth behind what could amount to another of the regime's cover-ups to find out what really happened inside the tunnel. Hello and welcome to China in Focus. I'm Evelyn Lee in for Tiffany today. This year's flood season is hitting central China hard, but one incident stands out above the rest. It started when deadly flood water surged into a traffic tunnel there, submerging hundreds of cars along the 2-mile stretch. Drivers and passengers had just minutes to escape after they noticed the danger, and the torrent quickly turned the road from tunnel to tomb. Chinese authorities say several dozen people died and blamed the incident on heavy rain, but locals describe a far greater loss, reporting that thousands perished. And that discrepancy is raising questions. In this special report, we explore what really happened during the Zhengzhou city tunnel flood, and we look at evidence that show that human error and other factors played a far greater role in sparking the tragedy than natural ones. So let's go back to the afternoon of July 20th inside the Jiangguang Road tunnel. That's when severe and sudden flooding inundated the miles-long tunnel. The tunnel passes through the center of China's Zhengzhou city and is part of the area's major expressway. Survivors recall sitting in a late afternoon traffic jam when water suddenly started rushing in, quickly filling the tunnel. On top of that, the traffic blocked cars from inside from moving, leaving them with no clear path of escape. In just 5 minutes, victims went from realizing there was danger to being completely submerged. All 6 lanes of the tunnel were reportedly packed with cars. Over 3,000 vehicles and thousands of people are estimated to have been inside. Initial reports from a Chinese state-run media outlet explained that thousands of vehicles were submerged. But that figure was later reduced to hundreds. One survivor recalls being stuck in traffic around 700 feet from the tunnel entrance. In an interview, he explained that there was already some water in the tunnel at around 4 p.m., but it wasn't rising at the time. But just an hour later, he said that changed. With some cars already floating, he made the split-second decision to abandon his car and run. In no more than 3 minutes, his car had completely disappeared underwater. Another survivor told the media that her car vanished beneath the torrent in just 5 minutes. Many are now looking for answers. A document shows that a reservoir located a mile from the city's downtown area took emergency action that day, releasing excess water to relieve pressure following the heavy rain. Some say that's what caused the tunnel flood. But that reservoir, called the Changzhuang Reservoir, wasn't the only source. In fact, public reports show at least 5 reservoirs around the Zhengzhou city area were discharging water that same day. 2 of them, located by the border of the city, released 7 times more water than Changzhuang. They also gave no warning ahead of time. And evidence seen in one video suggests that the majority of the flood water came from the reservoirs and not just rain. And after the tunnel was drained, there were actually remnants of aquatic plants inside the tunnel. These types of plants come from rivers and other bodies of water, including reservoirs. Though many lives were lost in the disaster, some were able to make it out. 3 of those survivors had all been riding in the same car. They shared the details of their narrow escape with the Epoch Times. To watch today's full special report about the flooded tunnel in Zhengzhou City, click the link in the description below. We're working with Epoch TV, and all Friday special reports are published there in full length. Now we turn to today's daily news. U.S. President Biden has responded to China's criticism of American troops leaving Afghanistan. Chinese media are saying things like the U.S. can't be counted on, and Afghanistan today, Taiwan tomorrow. Biden refuted the criticism, saying the U.S. can be counted on, and that if anyone were to invade its allies, the U.S. would respond. NTD's Don Ma has more.
As American forces leave Afghanistan and the Taliban takes control, Chinese media are taking the opportunity to denounce the U.S. with accusations that they're not trustworthy. Taunting assertions claim Taiwan will be deserted next, with headlines like Afghanistan today, Taiwan tomorrow, or America abandoned Afghanistan, Taiwan needs to wake up. On Wednesday, President Biden addressed those concerns. In an interview with ABC News, he was asked about China's rhetoric that the U.S. can't be counted on. Biden replied, "Why wouldn't China say that? If in fact anyone were to invade or take action against our NATO allies, we would respond. Same with Japan, same with South Korea, same with Taiwan." On Thursday, the State Department reiterated the U.S.'s position. On Thursday, China responded to Biden's interview. The regime reiterated its claim that Taiwan is part of China and that this is a red line that no country can cross. In contrast, Taiwan expressed sincere thanks to the U.S. for clearly reaffirming its security commitments to the island. In response to Chinese media's comments on Afghanistan and Taiwan, China affairs commentators say Afghanistan and Taiwan cannot be equally compared. The U.S. left Afghanistan partly because it no longer has a vested interest in the country. Whereas in the case of Taiwan, as Ned Price said, it is in the U.S.'s great interest to keep the island free from communist China. Taiwan is also home to the world's largest and most valuable semiconductor manufacturing company, TSMC, which produces chips that many U.S. companies depend on. Taiwan and other countries are part of what is known as the First Island Chain. It's partly what's stopping China's navy from freely roaming the Pacific Ocean. If Taiwan falls into the hands of China, geographically, it would be much easier for China's military to threaten the U.S. Don Ma, NTD News.
Japan will reportedly deploy hundreds of missile units to its island close to Taiwan, as the country grows increasingly concerned about a Chinese invasion of Taiwan. Japan's deputy prime minister has said if Taiwan falls, Japan is next. Here's NTD's Don Ma with more.
Japan is strengthening its military defenses on its islands close to Taiwan. This is a move aimed at meeting China's increasing maritime military aggression. According to reports, the Japanese Defense Ministry plans to deploy 500 to 600 missile units to be stationed on Ishigaki Island by the end of 2022. These missile units are capable of striking both seabound and airbound targets. The units will be engaged during an initial response in a military conflict. The Ishigaki Island is only around 200 miles away from Taiwan, indicating that the Japanese Defense Ministry had China in mind for the missile deployment. Japan is growing more concerned about a possible Chinese invasion of Taiwan. The country's deputy prime minister has said that Japan would see an invasion of Taiwan as a threat to Japan's survival. He says if Taiwan falls, Japan will be next. Recently, China has been showing more military aggression in the area surrounding Taiwan. A former Japanese Navy captain tells NTD that he's worried.
The CCP has been expanding its sphere of influence by force since the founding of the party 100 years ago. It has used all strategic means to seize targets, including countries and regions.
He says China does indeed yearn to take over Japan.
The original plan of the CCP was to completely suppress Japan within 100 years after its founding. In fact, it is being implemented as planned. That's why the Taiwan Strait and the Indian Ocean are particularly important to Japan.
In Japan's annual defense report last month, the country warned that Japan needs to pay attention to the Taiwan situation with a sense of crisis. Japan is part of a group of islands called the First Island Chain. It includes Taiwan, Okinawa, and the Philippines. If China takes control over Taiwan and Japan, it would effectively have control of the entire First Island Chain region. This would give China a tremendous advantage in a military conflict with the U.S. Don Ma, NTD News.
India deployed soldiers to the Chinese border on Thursday for drills. They used weapons from a Swedish company. Tensions have run high at the border between China and India since last year's Galwan Valley clash, a dispute that saw 20 Indian soldiers and an unknown number of Chinese troops killed. Thursday's drills were held in eastern India's Sikkim state. Just a few years ago, Indian and Chinese forces clashed there after Indian troops stopped China from building a road in the area. Both sides deployed hundreds of soldiers in that dispute. A new report says Apple is censoring certain content in its engraving services. The University of Toronto's Citizen Lab found that Apple censors keywords, including those of Chinese politicians, dissidents, and other political terms. And it's not only happening in mainland China, but in Taiwan and Hong Kong. For example, terms like freedom of the press or human rights are not accepted. The pop-up error message says, please resubmit your engraving message. Citizen Lab found that at least 1,000 keywords are blocked in China. Hong Kong has over 500 censored words, and there are nearly 400 in Taiwan. Words like Falun Gong are also blocked. Apple responded, saying the filtering system is to respect local laws and customs. Citizen Lab researcher Jeffrey Knuckle tells U.S. Media Protocol there are two reasons Apple would censor in Hong Kong and Taiwan. One is to please the Chinese Communist regime. The other could simply be neglect. Apple insists the engraving service complies with the company's values, but Citizen Lab says Apple should have a protocol that explains their censorship. This year in the UK, turkeys, toys, and even Christmas trees may be more expensive. Shoppers preparing for Christmas will see higher prices and fewer choices. Retailers say it's due to disruptions caused by the pandemic. Here's more.
With months still to go before the holiday season, traders in the UK warn that this year, people might not find what they're looking for at Christmas time. With companies restarting operations as virus restrictions ease, demand for shipping containers is rising, pushing up costs.
Christmas will be more costly this year, there is no doubt about that. It's going to affect food, it's going to get clothing, it's going to affect toys, everything you can mention. Christmas trees.
The price of transporting a container of Christmas goods from China is up 700% since last year. According to new data from the British Chambers of Commerce, more than 60% of retailers and wholesalers expect their prices to rise in the run-up to Christmas, and nearly 60% of manufacturers expect price increases.
70% of our members were having trouble recruiting the right people. So not only an increase in wages, but an increase in shipping costs are putting quite a lot of pressure on our members.
Around 9 million turkeys are reared annually in the UK for Christmas. But this year, farmers are warning that staff shortages will decrease production by an estimated 20%. That's as the country sees fewer EU workers.
This Christmas, there will not be the amount of British turkeys in the retailers because they're physically not going to be there, because companies, the turkey farmers, have made the decision they're not going to be able to pluck them and process them.
One toy retailer says it might also have supply issues. That's because many popular toys, like interactive pets, need microchips, a critical electronic component that's in short supply around the globe.
And that's it for today's China in Focus. Thanks for tuning in, and see you next time.